going to say, it sounds very complicated.
There's two parts. If the board members will take their places, the meeting will begin. Call to order the JEDO Board of Directors meeting on this Wednesday, June 3rd. You've received a copy of the agenda. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda as printed and posted. We will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
De La Isla.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Commissioners Bueller, Cook,
Here.
and Archer.
Here. And I was informed by Commissioner Bueller that she had a previous business engagement that she had to maintain and would not be here this evening. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the meeting of May 13th. Board members, you have received those minutes. Do you have corrections or suggestions to them? What is your pleasure?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Now, Commissioner Archer moves to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Cook seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, voting members, please raise your right hand.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, public
Oh, we
comment.
got yours.
I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out to me. We have two individuals signed for public comment. This is an action item. The first person signed to comment is Joseph Ledbetter.
All right, speak on this item.
All right, he has, will pass. The second is Timothy Zur.
It's Zarowski, they just didn't finish.
All right, I think it was, thank you. Yes, it was misspelled on our list.
Okay.
Mr. Mizowski. Thank you, and would you spell your last name so that we get it accurately?
Well, thank you. Z-U-R-A-W-S-K-I.
Okay, thank you.
3 syllables, pretty easy. Actually, I just came to say thank you for all your work, your hard work. You people do excellent job. You work hard. What you do is really not recognized. I know you see our group as maybe less than love, but really we are here to help. And I just wanted to take the time to say thank you, because you do a lot of things behind the scenes. You don't see it, but you look at the city, and that's good. It really is good. We're just here to help tweak just a little bit. So that's all I had, was thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That completes the public comment on this item. We have a motion and a second. There's no discussion. We will vote. All the voting members, all those in favor, please raise your right hand.
We have 6 yes.
6 having voted yes, the minutes are approved as printed. The third item is the approval of the contract with Garner Economics. And you received a copy of this. It was posted with the agenda. There were 2 changes made to the agreement, and those are on page 12 from what was presented when we had at the previous meeting. If you turn to page 12, the first sentence states, and actually the community input is a vital part of the strategic planning process, period. Garner Economics will facilitate up to 6 focus groups around key community categories, and in the original proposal, the number was 4. That was increased to 6. And going down, actually at the end of that sentence, the sentence was added, additionally, Garner Economics will hold 1 public listening session to solicit the broader community's feedback. That was indirectly intimated in the earlier agreement, but Mr. Garner preferred to make it more specific based on the discussion and the comments at the meeting. So those are the only two changes made to the proposal that was presented at our previous meeting, which was then voted by the board to approve to proceed with. Is there discussion or questions pertaining to this? Deputy Mayor Gilbert.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions for clarification, and one of them is on this very item. I'm still concerned that the language here, the 6 focus groups still define community categories by using the examples of large and small employers, government officials, and other groups, quote, relevant to Topeka Shawnee County, and puts that one big, broad public listening session is the only one that really opens up. And in our resolution that we submitted for the RFP, I thought that this group did a very good job of making it clear that we wanted to be very totally inclusive of the community. And as far as I'm concerned, that would include the focus group sessions. So I wanted to make that comment here. And then I'm not sure that this has to be changed. I have a question that relates to that then. This document as amended, as well as our resolution, are both included by reference in this agreement as the guiding documents for the relationship. This proposal doesn't, in many ways, does not in itself reflect the detail and the work that we put into that resolution. So my question is, who will be making sure your name is on that contract? Will we be able to focus on the fact that we want to make sure that our resolution to the letter is reflected in the work that gets done, and who will be the point person? How will we be making sure that happens?
On your first point, in general discussions that we had with Mr. Garner, he has actually planned, and I would, in a sense, it's sort of preliminary to discuss, and we can until we have a contract, a meeting on, we tentatively set for June 24th, at which he would define the responsibilities, actually with the JEDO Board of Directors, at which he would define the responsibilities. One of which is the JEDO board members submitting names of the people to be in focus groups. So his purpose is certainly this body is the group that will oversee, provide input, and he sees it as our responsibility to see that the consultant carries out our wishes. And he had indicated he would review the processes, what we have in our resolution that night, and how we can engage in all of that. Now, so that's my response based on discussions with him.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That's a lot of work on our part, but that is pretty much the language that was in his proposal. I hoped, that's work, but as long as we all understand that we've got a lot of responsibility to make this roll out the way we want it to, then I think that's important. The other two questions I had, if I may, he has a calendar that's got 6 weeks, but it doesn't have a start and end date. And then we also have a lot of responsibility for staffing, and I wondered if you had already at least come up with tentative commitments for those dates, as well as who the point person for staff would be.
Well, again, the contract would begin when it is signed. It is then, and that's to say the clock starts at that point.
Okay.
He has tentatively planned times in June to be here to start the process, and that first one would be the June 24th date, which is a Wednesday. We have always Wednesdays are the meetings times. Actually, he had planned to have it. His preference was the third Wednesday, but that is the night the city council has scheduled a budget meeting. So it was determined that we'd have to go to the fourth Wednesday of the month.
We've got a
And
budget
that
meeting
would
the
be-
night before that, too.
I know. And the county also has various meetings to work around. So that is a meeting at which, and actually, another point, our responsibilities will be primarily in the first month, because that will be when we are setting up the focus groups, getting all of that community engagement, the meetings, et cetera, will be in that first period. So then after that, it will be much more their process of the data and working through that.
And your office will be the primary staffing?
He thought it would be best that my office would be the point person office. And I have discussed with the city manager. The city will provide the adequate staff to carry out the duties necessary. And again, they said they will be primarily in the month of June, or the first 6 weeks of setting up the meetings, contacting people, and that whole process.
Thank you, that clarifies.
Are there other questions? We do have public comment. We could go to that before we entertain a motion. The first person to speak is Joseph Ledbetter.
Evening, everybody, JEDO. Remember when I used to complain you guys didn't meet enough? Wow. Anyway, I'll keep up. I just was noticing on page 2 of the agreement, paragraph 6 talks about records. Thought it was interesting that we're asking the documents and records of this agreement to be for a period of 5 years, which I have no problem with, but contrast that with your JEDO contract with Topeka for $5 million a year, which has only 3 years, and I've been asking for that to be changed. It doesn't mean they should only keep them 3 years, because I think they have other laws and regulations they have to abide by with the IRS for the huge amounts of money that they take as a nonprofit. And I'm quite sure, I'm certain, and that I'm correct on that. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. But I like the contract. I appreciate Ms. Hiller's comments about making sure that these focus groups have, she didn't quite say it this way, but I would say it's certainly open to the public and open to additional public comment, even if certain people aren't put into certain groups. It seems like with a public entity like this, the more input you have, the happier you'd be with that. You would want to see more people showing up and more people speaking and offering those great ideas that my group offers at these meetings and other places, but which is Citizens for Accountability in Government. But thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. The next person to speak is Timothy Zirinsky. And you'll pass? Okay. Next is then Clark Trammell.
Good evening, one and all. What a wonderful evening for the reason we're here. I brought some papers I'd like to pass out. Hi, Brenda. Thank you. That I sent you by email, but my email was having problems, so I want to make sure you get this. I wanted to speak briefly to one specific point. But before I get there, a couple of comments I'd like to make. This document speaks for part of it, and I'll bring it up in just a second. But as I look at all of you, I find that we've all come together to this point to make some very, very critical and important decisions for this community. This contract being the culmination of those efforts at this point. This is our town. This is our time. And it's our responsibility to take this community forward in the right direction, of which this is doing. We worked long and hard through talking about the RFP, to approving the RFP, the conversations about a consultant, to voting on a consultant, and now we're here. That is exciting, because what that can do for us in the end run, in the end game, is huge. And I want to make sure we all recognize that, and I believe we do. I want to continue to do my part, to be a positive influence and input to this process. Now, I met with Jay Garner. I think we've got the right guy. We'll see what happens, but I believe in him. I believe in your decisions. So having said that, I'd like to end with this. This is the point I came. We're going to end, when we end this, everything's going to be all right. If it isn't all right, then we're not at the end. And what I really wanted to come and tell you all is you've done an excellent job. And you don't hear that enough, but if we can criticize, we need to be, as people or professionals, big enough to compliment. So I compliment you all to getting us to this point. Now the real work begins. It's time to implement, assess, and move forward. And I'm there with you, and I thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Your comment about having problems with your computer reminded me of a comment I did not make at the beginning of the session, and that is City 4 is having a difficulty with Cox. We are live on Uverse. We are not live on Cox. If anyone is attempting to watch us on Cox, they can go to City 4 and they can go hit a button and it is being streamed live on Channel 4, but it is not on Cox. And there is an issue. It will not be solved probably until Monday. And so then this meeting will be shown on the rotating basis that we have with the county commission, the city council, and the city committees. So just wanted to make that note, and I apologize for not making it at the beginning if you are attempting to watch it on Cox this evening. All right, that completes the public comment and other comments. Do you have other questions or comments on the contract? None is your pleasure.
Move to approve.
All right. And I'm going to ask that we also, it's suggested that we approve the contract and that we authorize payment to Garner from Go-Topeka's budget. Go-Topeka can only pay what is stated in their budget. This is not a part of their budget. And they can only, they're in a sense our bank, they cannot pay anything unless we direct them to, if it isn't in their budget.
Move to approve and authorize the first payment of $20,000 from the Go-Topeka budget.
Okay.
I think it's a $20,000.
Yes, it is. Well, I would just say an authorized payment of the contract.
Oh, okay. I'm
And that
sorry.
way we wouldn't
I
have to
thought-
have future ones,
Fine.
if that's all right.
That's fine.
Okay. Is there a
Trust you to
second?
make those calls. So restated, Mary?
Well, let me suggest, I move to authorize the chair to execute the Garner agreement and authorize payment to Garner from Go-Topeka's budget, the amendment of which is hereby approved.
Exactly, that's why I
So well stated.
yeah.
Is there a second? Councilman Elias, seconds. Is there discussion? Councilman Shaw.
If we could, please, taking a look at this agenda item number 3, turning to page 2. Section 3, we have put here that JEDO will be billed by invoice for professional time and services. Go-Topeka, to my understanding, is separate from JEDO, and I don't think this looks right to switch. This would be like me telling my wife I'm going to buy something and then using her bank account. Kind of jive to it.
Okay.
So,
I understand, and what the reason that was put in there is that, again, the contract is between JEDO and Garner, so that Garner would submit the invoice to JEDO. And in our process of payments then, we submit all payments, to the finance committee in our interlocal agreement. and which is composed of the county and city financial officers. And then they can actually, in a sense, make payment or authorize, go to PICA to cut a check. So you want to add to that, and it's because the contract is between JEDO and Garner that we are doing this.
That's correct, and it needs to be, the invoices need to be vetted by JEDO before GO-TOPICA is directed to make payments.
I'm concerned this blurs the line between the two organizations.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Commissioner Cook?
I appreciate the concern that you might have in that, how is this being paid for? But as part of our duties of the Joint Economic Development Organization, we go through a budget every year where we actually outline what is the budget for GO-TOPICA. So we set their budget in different areas, different priorities. And so the question becomes, would we have the ability at this point to direct something to be paid? And I think that's ultimately the question that's being asked. And I think we do.
Okay. Are there other questions? We've already had public comment. We're now in the functioning of the council, of the board. Is there any other discussion on the motion? If not, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, Mayor Wolgast,
Yes.
Councilmember Hiller,
Yes.
Councilmember De La Isla,
Yes.
Councilmember Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Cook,
Yes.
and Commissioner Archer.
Yes.
Okay.
You have 6 yes.
6 having voted yes, the contract is approved as stated and will be entered. And I want to reiterate again that actually we put on the a hold on the county's calendar for that June 24th date. We will be getting more information out, actually, and it is a meeting called by Garner Consultants. It is not a board of directors meeting of JEDO. It's his meeting where he starts the process, and it will be not in this chamber because it is not a JEDO meeting, but to begin the process for getting it underway. The next item on the agenda is there any other business that comes before the board for consideration? Seeing none, we will then proceed to public comment, and first is Joseph Ledbetter.
Governing body, what just transpired was really, was fine as far as the contract, but we were told all along, and we asked and requested that those funds not come from GO-TOPICA because of the appearance of conflict of interest. We did not appreciate that money coming from them. Quite frankly, you people should have your own reserve fund. You should have your own money set aside for items such as this. I'm appalled that you don't have that. I mean, you've been in operation 13 years, and it's just not good public business. The contract's fine. We're happy about that. I think we've got to start doing these things differently down here. When we say we don't want it coming from GO-TOPICA, we're saying these for very valid reasons. And I am going to dispute and controvert something was said by one of the commissioners. You may approve these budgets, such scant items as they are, a 2-page budget, maybe with a little more detail from time to time, but at no point in those budgets or these contracts have you ever authorized giving hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to the Chamber of Commerce from that money. You've never done it, and yet it's been done over and over and over again in spite of public protest. And it's never been acted upon. I'm going to hand out this item. I think last night I didn't bring enough copies. I apologize to anybody that didn't get one last night, but I sent it by email. One of the disputes that continue to happen with this contract with Topeka is last year they agreed and filed an RFP stating that the JEDO funds would be subject to CORA. They signed off on it. A county commissioner signed off on that contract, knowing good and well that this was part of that process. To date, they still continue to deny people records that should be very public. This is public money. It's $5 million a year. There is no excuse for hiding it, not telling us what they're doing, not with the minutes, not any other items. I know one of the things they claim is there's all this economic development going on. Well, you drive around Topeka, it's not going on, and it hasn't been going on for quite a while. The last contract that Topeka brought this body was signed in 2011. It's been almost 4 years. And since then, we lost Hallmark, Jostens, we lost a number of good employers. And they were surprised, especially about Hallmark, which was only 3 blocks from their office. They didn't have a clue. They told me that. They said, we didn't know that. So, obviously, we're here with a consultant. We've passed a contract, we've signed a contract, we're gonna sign a contract to get some changes, and that's good. So I don't want to belabor that, but I do want to reiterate, and this has gone to the Attorney General as well, that this contract that they're under and previous contracts, as far as I'm concerned, have been always subject to CORA. It's just a lack of political will to enforce it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The second person is Timothy Zarowski.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mr. Ledbetter on the way the contractor is being funded. I think it's going to seriously affect, or it possibly could affect the way Gardner does his job, in that the money that he is getting to do his job is coming from an entity that, in part, he may be looking at from a well, he's just going to be looking at all aspects. It was in your RFP to begin with. Mr. Cook, is that funny? Because I don't think it's funny.
And your comments are to be directed to
Yes,
the
sir.
entire body,
Yes, sir.
not to
Yes, sir.
individuals. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it when people don't smile and laugh and talk when I'm talking. You're doing a great job, I told you that earlier. We need to tweak some things. Transparency is one of those things that we need to tweak. And if your budget doesn't come from the right place, it's going to seriously affect the way the man thinks and the way the man's able to do his job.
Thank you for your comments. The third person to speak is Carol Markle.
Thank you. I didn't come prepared to speak on this, but I think I have mentioned it before this board before, is that I believe in past minutes or JEDO minutes that I've read that JEDO had $15,000 that was supposed to be funds for them to use. And I think I've asked the questions where they went and where they're at, you know, and so I'm just throwing that out, but I thought there was some reference about JEDO having its own funds. I very much believe that Mr. Gardner was the right choice for this job, and I know that I have a tendency a lot of the time to get off subject, according to a lot of people. But I think that I bring forth things that maybe you're unaware of. Tonight I want to share with the Cora that I did make, and I'm becoming very, very alarmed, and I think everybody should be alarmed about how many of the private investors are receiving very lucrative jobs or paychecks from GoToPeca. I mean, the list just keeps growing. Right there is $515,052.19 to Bartlett and West. We will pay these companies or individuals, but I, as a taxpayer, cannot ask questions because I'm told this is being paid by a private investor. Well, aren't I not paying that private investor? I find this very, very upsetting, and, you know, I think we all agree we are not seeing the economic development that we'd like to see. But yet, we have a lot of private investors that are sure making money. And I'll drop that subject, and I'll go on to another one, which I did not mention at the last meeting, but as I said, it's like a festering sore with me. And that is the taxes that I am as a taxpayer am paying on the building located on 77th Street. Now, I don't think that it can be that hard to get this off the tax rolls of GoToPeca. They have lawyers, they have staff, and I just wrote a very healthy check for taxes. I object strongly to paying somebody else's taxes, and I think every one of you would feel the same way. It's a small problem, but yet in itself, it shows a big problem. If they cannot fix this $1,225, how can they run an economic development program? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person to speak is Clark Trammell.
Again, good evening. I really wasn't going to speak at the end, but since we went through that last process, I felt I had an obligation to you all and to what I told you my commitment was, to speak to this process. The decision that was made for GoToPeca to be writing the checks to pay Garner. Now, in reading the minutes and reading your processes, clearly states that comment from members of the public shall be entertained on each actionable agenda item and at the end of the meeting. If that was an actionable item, the second part of that you all approved, I did not get the opportunity to speak to because we had already spoken, and then you brought that up and there was no room nor were we asked to come back and speak. That's wrong. That is not good business nor fair business, and that's the perception that people are seeing here in this process with JEDO and the community that's got everybody riled up. And while we're going through this RFP and this contractor, we need to reinvent Topeka. We really do. We are out of sync with who we are and what we want to accomplish. And I don't know if you can back up and open this up to discussion or if you will, but I will tell you this gentleman over here was absolutely spot on. GoToPeca is not your arms and legs in this transaction. You hired them to do something specific, and it wasn't to write checks for contractors that you all hired. They should not be involved with this. I've ended my positiveness with the rah-rah I gave you earlier because I'm very pleased to get to this point, but now I've got my business hat on. And I really think we need to talk about this because that is not a good decision or fair. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. The next person to speak is Scott Griffith.
Good evening, thank you. A few comments were made tonight that I'd like to specifically address. But before I do, I too would like to thank you. As I've stated before, you all do yeoman's work. A lot of work goes in behind the scenes that we don't see, so thank you for what you do for our community. We had a respectful disagreement on Cora, and it was stated tonight that Go Topeka agreed to what was incorporated into the RFP. We don't believe that is correct. Our proposal to JEDO in response to that RFP clearly stated that we believe in accountability to the governing body is critical when the use of public funds is involved. As outlined in the proposal, it is expected that JEDO will receive regular reports, including the accounting for the use of public funds. All records and reports submitted to JEDO by Go Topeka are expected to be subject to the Kansas Open Records Act. Submission of this proposal and any contract that would result from this RFP and proposal are not intended to redefine Growth Organization of Topeka and Shawnee County, Go Topeka, as a public entity. So in our proposal to JEDO that was approved and then the subsequent contract was negotiated and finalized, we acknowledge that all the information that we present to you on a regular basis, annually, quarterly, and otherwise, and when we get specific contracts or incentive packages approved, we recognize that that is subject to Kansas Open Records Act. Number two, it was stated that no contracts have been made since several years ago. That too is not true. Big Arts is the most recent one, 2015. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but it's some $40 million in capital expenditures. I think approximately 8 new jobs and several retained jobs. So that was an incentive package that was brought and approved by JEDO this year. Bartlett West payments. Bartlett West has done a lot of work on behalf of Go Topeka. The Kansas Fire Business Park was a big part of that. Those monies were paid out of public funds, not private funds. The initial work done on that was an RFP. It was a competitive bid process. Bartlett and West was selected, and I think subsequent work was negotiated because of the work they'd already done. It made sense to continue with the same contractor. Finally, there was a reference to a building on 77th Street. Yes, when that building, when that contract was negotiated, the building owner, we own the land, the building owner, we agreed to go forward with the taxes. Well, it wasn't caught. And so Go Topeka paid, I think, a year, maybe a year and a half or 2 years of taxes on the building itself. Those funds have subsequently been reimbursed, and the contract with that building owner is being modified or changed right now. He will pay the taxes on a going forward basis. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. That completes the public comments for this evening. Is there any other business to come before the board? If not, the meeting is adjourned.
You got me in trouble. Keep a straight face.